Sometimes, without warning, the life you've been living begins to feel strangely unfamiliar. You wake up in the same room, you see the same face in the mirror. Your responsibilities are still waiting, your phone is still full of messages, and the world keeps moving as though nothing has changed. Yet somewhere beneath all of that, something has shifted. The goals that once pulled you forward feel hollow. The identity you worked so hard to build suddenly feels like clothing that no longer fits. You may not have the words for it yet, but a quiet question has started following you everywhere. Who am I if none of this means what I thought it meant? Most people assume a feeling like this means something has gone terribly wrong. Maybe you're losing motivation. Maybe you're becoming depressed. Maybe you've failed to appreciate the life you have. Those explanations can seem reasonable, especially when the experience feels heavy, confusing, or frightening. But there are moments when the problem isn't that your life has lost all meaning. The deeper problem may be that the meaning you borrowed from the world can no longer contain who you're becoming. Old ambitions, labels, beliefs, and roles begin cracking under the pressure of a truth that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Ego death begins inside that crack, not as the destruction of your personality, and not as the dramatic erasure of everything that makes you human, but as the collapse of an identity you once mistook for your entire self. It can feel like standing in a house while the walls slowly disappear. Every familiar reference point fades, and for a while, there's nowhere to hide. Yet the open space left behind isn't empty in the way you fear. Something deeper is waiting there, something that was present long before you learned your name, your status, your story, or the version of yourself you believed you had to become. From the beginning of life, you're handed pieces of an identity, a name, a family role, a culture, a set of expectations. People respond warmly when you behave in certain ways and withdraw when you don't, so you begin adjusting. You learn what earns approval, what causes rejection, what makes you appear strong, and what parts of yourself should remain hidden. Slowly, almost invisibly, a character forms. Not a false character in every sense, but an incomplete one. A version of you shaped by survival, belonging, and the need to make sense of the world. Imagine an actor who has played the same role for so many years that he forgets there was ever a stage. He wakes up speaking in the character's voice. He worries about the character's reputation. He protects the character's history and becomes terrified of anything that might change the script. Eventually, someone whispers from beyond the curtain, "You're not only the role." At first, those words don't feel liberating. They feel threatening. The role may be exhausting, but it's familiar. Without it, who would remain? Your ego works in a similar way. It gathers memories, achievements, wounds, opinions, fears, desires, and social labels, then ties them together into a story called me. There's nothing inherently evil about this. Ego helps you navigate practical life. It remembers where you live, how to communicate, what promises you've made, and which dangers to avoid. Trouble begins when a useful psychological structure becomes a prison, when you believe the story isn't merely something you carry, but the totality of what you are. Soon, every experience is filtered through the need to protect that story. Praise feels like proof that you exist. Criticism feels like an attack on your being. Success makes the character feel solid, while failure makes the whole identity tremble. You may spend years decorating this inner structure, adding titles, relationships, beliefs, possessions, or spiritual ideas to make it feel permanent. Still, somewhere behind the performance, a quiet awareness remains. It watches every role come and go. Ego death begins when that awareness moves closer and asks a question the character can't answer. Who is watching all of this? Once that question enters your life, the old structure may begin to loosen. Sometimes the change happens gently. A familiar ambition loses its grip. A belief you once defended no longer feels true. You notice how much energy has gone into impressing people, avoiding discomfort, or trying to become worthy of love. Other times, the shift arrives through loss. A relationship ends, a career collapses, someone you love dies, a future you depended on suddenly disappears, and the meaning built around it falls away almost overnight. Experiences like these can open what spiritual traditions have called the dark night of the soul. In that darkness, the mind searches for explanations and finds none that satisfy. Yesterday's answers sound empty. The plans that once created certainty no longer offer comfort. You may feel as though life has been drained of color, as though you're walking through a city after every sign has been removed. Streets remain, buildings remain, people continue passing by, but the directions are gone, and you no longer know where any road leads. Here's where fear usually becomes loud. The ego interprets the loss of its framework as the loss of life itself. It says, "You're disappearing. You'll never feel normal again. You need to rebuild the old meaning immediately." So you may rush toward distraction, force yourself into new goals, cling to a relationship, adopt another identity, or search desperately for a philosophy that will make the uncertainty stop. Yet trying to escape the darkness too quickly can be like repairing a wall that life is asking you to walk through. The collapse feels cruel only because you can't yet see what it is making possible. A seed buried beneath the soil might believe it has been abandoned. No sunlight, no open sky, no evidence that anything beautiful is happening. Its old form begins to split, and from the seed's point of view, the process looks like death. But the breaking isn't punishment. The shell must open because the life within it has outgrown the shape that once protected it. Ego death follows a similar rhythm. What is breaking may not be your true self. What is breaking may be the shell around it. Understanding the process intellectually can help, but ego death doesn't unfold through ideas alone. The mind may memorize beautiful teachings about surrender while secretly trying to control every stage of the journey. Real surrender is quieter. It begins when you stop arguing with the fact that this moment is happening. Fear may still be present, grief may still rise, confusion may still sit heavily in the body. Surrender doesn't demand that you enjoy any of it. It simply asks you to stop turning your pain into a courtroom where reality is constantly placed on trial. Picture yourself caught in a strong river. Panic makes you fight the current, claw at the water, and exhaust every muscle trying to return to the shore you've already passed. Surrender isn't drowning. It's realizing the river may carry you more safely once you stop treating it like an enemy. You remain awake. You still respond wisely. You still seek help when needed. But inwardly, you release the demand that life must immediately become different before you can meet it fully. During ego death, this release often sounds like, "I don't know." 3 simple words, yet the ego resists them because its identity depends on certainty. It wants to know who you are, where you're going, why this is happening, and what the final outcome will be. Saying "I don't know" wipes part of the board clean. It creates room for reality to reveal itself without being forced into an old framework. A tree doesn't need a theory about autumn before releasing its leaves. It lets go because something deeper than thought already understands the season. Still, surrender shouldn't be confused with neglecting your mental or physical health. Spiritual language can sometimes make people feel they must endure severe depression, isolation, or emotional crisis alone. You don't become less awakened by reaching for support. Speaking with someone you trust, resting, receiving professional care, eating properly, or stepping away from overwhelming situations can be part of surrender too. Wisdom doesn't ask you to romanticize suffering. It asks you to meet what is real without shame, denial, or unnecessary resistance. As resistance softens, small openings begin to appear. Nothing dramatic may happen at first. You might notice sunlight resting on a wall without immediately naming it. You might hear someone laugh and feel the sound move through you before the mind turns it into a judgment. A few quiet seconds arrive in which you aren't trying to become anyone, defend anything, or reach the next moment. Life is simply here, and strangely, so are you. A deeper identity begins to reveal itself, not as another description, but as presence. You can't place it neatly on a resume. You can't measure it through approval or achievement. It doesn't become more valuable when praised or less real when rejected. Some call it awareness, some call it consciousness, spirit, being, or the true self. Words can point toward it, but no word can contain it. You know it less through thinking and more through the direct recognition that every thought, emotion, and role appears within something larger. From here, meaning returns, but it returns differently. Before, meaning may have depended on reaching a destination, proving your worth, or securing a future that could protect you from uncertainty. Now meaning feels less like an explanation and more like a connection. Washing a cup can hold meaning. Sitting beside someone in pain can hold meaning. Breathing quietly while rain touches the window can hold meaning. Nothing needs to become extraordinary before it becomes sacred. You don't stop being human after ego death. Personality remains. Preferences remain. Old patterns may still visit. You can still feel hurt, become impatient, make mistakes, or lose yourself in thought. The difference is that the character is no longer carrying the impossible burden of being your entire existence. You can play the role without forgetting the stage. You can participate in your story without being imprisoned by it. Life becomes lighter, not because pain disappears, but because pain no longer has to prove that you are broken. Should this process be unfolding in you now, don't rush to rebuild the person you used to be. Give yourself permission to stand in the unfinished space. Let old answers fall silent. Let grief move. Let uncertainty breathe. Ask for help where help is needed. And stop judging yourself for not knowing what comes next. Something within you may be learning to live without the walls that once felt like safety. You don't need to force an awakening, chase a dramatic experience, or create suffering in the hope of becoming spiritual. Life already knows how to open what is ready to open. Your task is simpler, though not always easy. Remain present while the false loses its grip. Notice the roles, but remember, you're more than the roles. Honor the story, but don't confuse it with the one who is aware of the story. Ego death isn't the end of you. It's the end of believing that a collection of memories, fears, and labels could ever contain the mystery of what you are. Let the old self bow. Let the deeper life step forward. Somewhere beneath everything you're afraid to lose, you may discover something that was never born and therefore can never die.